Ontario Public Service Union Employee President Smokey Thomas joins Net News Ledger. The OPSEU President's calling for Premier Ford to apologize publicly. I'm sure on your end this has been a week where it's sort of bittersweet. Finally, there's an admission of what your members have known for a long time.
And yes, well, that's exactly right. They're still they're in a terrible mess. But for going all the way back to Dalton McGuinty, Kathleen Wynne, Deb Matthews, all these previous government that made all the changes, watered down, how much care people get, change the inspections, change it into a complaint-based system, very few proactive inspections, all the way up to the Tories here who really haven't done anything to fix it. None of what was said in that military report should come as a shock. Maybe the individual details are horrific, but on April the 22nd, we actually sent a letter to the Premier and the Minister of Long-Term Care outlining our concerns, but it was around about inspectors, long-term care inspectors, Ministry of Labour going into homes. On the 14th of April, the Chief Medical Officer of Health issued a directive saying that people could only work in one long-term care home. So a lot of people work in 2 and 3, because all part-time work.
Yes.
And so they were restricted to 1, but management was saying, our members could go into 4, or 3 or 4 or 5, and we didn't think that was safe. And for a couple of reasons. One, you could run the risk of spreading right from
Yes.
home to home. It's because there was a real serious lack of personal protective equipment. And so we wrote a letter, who consulted with the chair of our sector in the ministry and some inspectors. And nowhere did we ever say, that our folks ever refused to go in. And in fact, I'm sitting here as we speak looking at a memo from March the 25th that says proactive inspections suspended during COVID-19, follow-up inspections suspended, complaints and triage assigned back to the service area office, inquiries suspended, level 3 inspections suspended, and if you must go into a home, it has to be with the permission of a senior manager. So, they weren't allowed to go in. So the Premier yesterday said, accused our members of refusing to go into inspections. That's just absolutely untrue. So they've been flagging for decades, literally, problems in these long-term care home facilities, most notably in the private for-profit ones. Not all, but a lot of them. And about 52% of the system's privatized. Now, that started under Mike Harris, and the Liberals didn't reverse anything. In fact, they made it worse, and of course, Tories didn't fix anything here. They kind of made it worse. So it should come as no surprise. They're the employer. We worked with one of my chief of staff worked with the Premier's chief of staff day before yesterday, because the Premier said he wants 2 inspectors in each home for a week to 2 weeks. We agree, and so do our inspectors. They've been itching to get in there and get looking around. But the direction they've had from management is phone inspections, and homes don't have to comply. They can opt out, and inspectors were changed from doing inspections and looking for problems to offering support and encouragement and find something nice to say.
Oh,
so our people are just, beside themselves here. So then by yesterday, all inspectors were to have personal protective equipment provided by the government, delivered to their office, right, their regional office or their home, whichever is closer. Most of them still don't have it, and yet the Premier is saying they're refusing to do their jobs, and they're not. They're just waiting for the go-ahead to go in, because you can't just walk up and go in. You have to have they won't let you in without the proper protective gear on, right? So
now,
they don't have it. So,
Smokey, a phone inspection. So if I were to call you up right now and say, okay, is your house clean? And you could say yes on the phone, and I wouldn't have a clue if you were telling me the truth or not.
That's right.
And
That's the problem with phone inspections. Yeah.
so wouldn't wouldn't it make sense? I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but your members are there on the ground. They've been saying for a long time what they saw as issues, and now the government is saying, okay, well, they can phone their inspectors will phone the homes. Why wouldn't they be talking to your members or through OPSEU to say, okay, what are you guys seeing here? Is it safe? A good
Well,
employer-employee
yeah.
inspector relationship.
Well, so what happened was in the dying days of the Liberals, they did an overhaul of the system yet again. So they created a level of management called inspection managers. So our folks, inspectors, will go in, investigate a complaint, like the wet lopper complaint. That was one of my members that did that investigation. Remember the woman that got convicted of murdering people? And so one of our members did that. That took months. But so our folks will go in, answer complaints or do inspections, and they write a report. And they may or may not write an order. So they might say to a home, your food is lacking, or your kitchen's not sanitary, or we don't like how your medications are being dispensed, or there's a problem, or you got too many patients with bed sores, so those sorts of things. And here's what you must correct this and come up with a plan to correct it. Well, so they all of a sudden back in 2018, instead of being able to actually follow up and enforce that, they then had to give their reports and orders they wrote to a manager. And then most often they wouldn't hear any more. And they would go back to a home to follow up, and the care director would say, well, I've been talking to your manager for a month, so what are you doing here? So managers were watering down reports, deep fixing complaints, all sorts of things, all manner of things. And my folks tell me they can prove it, and they will. And so then to take it, the thought was at one point, before you go to a home, call and say, they had a checklist they were supposed to call. But the home didn't have to take your call, and they didn't have to answer your questions, and they didn't have to take your advice or even let you in. And then they turned it over to Public Health Ontario to create these teams to go in. Well, that was good. So they finally started getting people in there to, turn things around. And our inspectors were to be assigned to these teams, but they still were not allowed to do inspections. They weren't allowed to offer advice. They were just there to find something good to say and to offer encouragement. So management, the bureaucracy in the Ministry of Long-Term Care changed the system at the start of the COVID-19 crisis. And I truly believe they changed it to water down, and if you will, and to not have everything get out into the public domain. Because my union, I've made we've been after nursing homes inspections in the state of them as our other unions, other advocacy groups, family advocacy groups for decades. And the people that designed the system and all the changes under the Liberals are still there today with the Tories. So, when the Premier got up there and said, OPSEU inspectors are refusing to go in, that's not true, but somebody had to tell him that. You know what I mean? Like, so either he made it up, which I doubt, or somebody's misled him. So I think these bureaucrats been trying to cover their ass throughout all of this, and find, they don't want the blame heaped on them, but it's where it belongs is on the senior people in the ministry and the minister, quite frankly. I don't believe the minister, if these bureaucrats didn't completely inform the minister of everything, then they should be fired. If they did inform the minister and the minister did nothing, then the minister should step down. But I believe right now we're looking at maybe both those, the minister and some of those senior managers need to go.
Now,
so the key here now is to actually have inspectors go in and do inspections, which take time, and they have to. And I'm happy to hear they're going to go in and spend time in the place every day, all day, and find out what's really going on. But they can't have their orders and their reports deep fixed or watered down, or they have to their work of those inspectors who are charged, that's their job, is to say what needs fixing here. Somebody can't then go and disagree with them and say, well, we're not going to tell the home they have to do that, because that's what happens right now.
So moving forward, the Premier yesterday said that basically all options are on the table, and I know he'd been in talking about not having a public inquiry. A public inquiry would take a lot longer than anything else, but is a public inquiry the solution?
I think it needs two things. One, there needs to be, we know what's wrong already, right? It's not a secret of what's wrong with them. They're understaffed. There's not enough hours of care. Do you know what I mean? The profit motive is a huge problem. So we know some of the things that immediately can be changed and should be. So he should start to immediately address that. If he wants to appoint a commissioner to look into it, that's fine. But I worry too about a public inquiry, because that can take years. Well, we don't have years. The people who have passed away need justice. Their families need justice. The people who are left in those places need to be properly taken care of. So there are immediate steps. So I say both. You take the immediate steps to start to fix up what's wrong, and not back down and not let up, and put whatever resources you have to it to fix it up. And you know what I mean? Have people properly taken care of, have enough staff in there to properly take care of people. And then if you're down the road, proceed with a public inquiry, because one benefit of that would be by examining the history of how all this came to pass over 20 or 25 years. Only then can we perhaps avoid making mistakes again in future generations and doing the people that built this province the ultimate disservice of all. So I hope that, hang on, my other phone's ringing. So I hope I kind of hope they do both, actually. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a huge issue that needs to be solved. And, it's heartbreaking to see that it's taken COVID-19 and so many deaths to do it.
No, I agree. But back on April the 22nd, we wrote a letter outlining our concerns to the Premier and the Minister. And had they maybe taken the time to read that letter and respond, we put in writing the very issues that the military report laid bare. Now, we didn't put in the very shocking details, but the general issues of short staff, short supplies, profit taking, you know what I mean? Like people, yes. We outlined those in the letter on April the 22nd, because what we said was the way they wanted to do the inspections, we disagreed with. And all we said is, if you want people to go in the homes, right, the inspectors to go in, great, they want to go in. And some of them did go in. A lot of them went in even without all the proper gear to protect themselves. They did the best they could with the tools they had. But we're saying, they just can't show up, knock on the door and ask for a mask and go look around. It doesn't work that way. The homes didn't have to let them in. So we outlined our concerns. And again, if the Premier and if they'd taken the opportunity to read the letter and reply, I'm guessing we could have maybe avoided a lot of this mess.
Smokey, thank you for your time today, and I'll be back in touch with you. We'll keep our readers and viewers up here in Northern Ontario and Ontario up to date as much as we can. Thank you.
I appreciate your interest. Thank you.
Take care. Stay up to date, stay safe, and stay subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, join Net News Ledger on our YouTube and our Facebook pages so you know what's happening.